This video will contain vague discussions of topics that might be triggering to some. Viewer discretion is advised. You can head over to my Patreon for an uncut version of this video which features extra disturbing details. Please do not attempt to contact or harass anyone mentioned in this video. If you've been on YouTube long enough, you've probably heard of Obedece the Walrus, and you'll be aware that the story that often accompanies the video has been debunked as a creepypasta. The actual story behind the video is almost as bizarre as some of the theories were though, and while the video might not have been created by a cult as the creepypasta claimed, it ended up leading to the formation of one. This story is almost unheard of outside of the Hispanic YouTube community. In fact, I'm yet to find a single video in English that covers it. I'd like to thank Reddit user Dreamer1 for their extremely detailed post on the hobby drama subreddit. Without it, this video would have been very hard to research as most of the sources are in Spanish, and many of them are videos, so if there's no auto-translate, it's very hard to work out what they're saying if you don't speak Spanish. I'll start by summarising the creepypasta and explaining the footage, just in case this is new to anyone, then we'll get on to the mysterious individual who uploaded it. In October 2007, a video was uploaded on YouTube titled Obedece a la Morsa, which is Obey the Walrus in Spanish. It starts with the Star Fox character Andros singing, and after a few trippy patterns, cuts to clips of someone dancing, and finally a photo of a walrus, all while a distorted version of the nursery rhyme Incy Wincy Spider plays in the background. Different audio and visual effects are used throughout to give the video a more unsettling vibe. It was uploaded by Obedece Walrus, we'll call them Obey, though the tap dancing clips had surfaced over a year earlier on eBaum's World, then in one of Contron's YouTube videos. I assume the video on eBaum's World wasn't the full Obey the Walrus video, as only clips of the original footage without the music and visual effects appear in Contron's video. Presumably, Obey found the clips then added the chilling music and effects. No creepypasta would be complete without an ominous backstory. The video was purportedly created by a Latin American cult known as La Morsa, or the Walrus, and bad things are supposed to happen after you watch the video. The tap dancing clips were actually from a 1994 documentary, The Goddess Bunny, which was about California's underground LGBT scene and Sandie Crisp, a trans woman whose stage name was Goddess Bunny. Sandie was born in 1960 and immediately suffered with polio, a potentially devastating disease even with good medical care. But she was failed by doctors, who inserted an 18-inch long steel rod into her back when she was a child. It was never removed and it seriously disfigured her body, making it very difficult for her to walk. That alone puts a depressing spin on the footage. Learning to tap dance must have been very hard for her, but she persevered and was ridiculed for it, dehumanised for the sake of a so-called creepy video. She also struggled with gender identity and her family weren't supportive, to say the least. She ended up in foster homes where she was abused and made to feel like an outcast. Basically, she had a really tough life until she eventually moved to Hollywood, a much more progressive and accepting area, and began a career as a drag queen. Finally, she not only had a place to fit in, but she was in demand, being offered roles in indie films and music videos, as well as various photography projects, and most notably the documentary about her. The tap dancing scenes in the doc show Sandie having fun. They were taken totally out of context for the Obey the Walrus video. None of the clips were cursed, bad things didn't happen after watching it, and as far as I knew until recently, that's where the story ends. At the point where the Obey the Walrus video had almost been debunked, it had been concluded that there was no cult of La Morsa. People had searched high and low on the internet and found no records of such an organisation. Considering other parts of the story, like the suggestion that the video was cursed, had been proven false, there wasn't really any good reason to give the cult claims the benefit of the doubt. The video was likely created by some edgy and inconsiderate kid who decided to exploit a disabled woman for the sake of cheap entertainment, and so the case was closed, at least for those of us who don't speak Spanish. For better or worse, the video had some cultural significance in the English-speaking horror community on YouTube, but it was even bigger in the Hispanic community, where some creators weren't satisfied laying this to rest as a run-of-the-mill creepypasta and decided to investigate further. During the year that Obedece was active on YouTube, they uploaded 10 more videos, all of a similar surreal nature but with subliminal messages, which didn't seem to appear in Obedece the Walrus. Naturally, people wanted to know more about the individual who was creating these videos and their motives, but the channel itself didn't reveal much beyond their age, 19, and location, Mexico. If a channel like this popped up now, it'd be instantly dismissed as an ARG. We've all seen this play out a million times, but this happened before the genre was done to death, and in any case, there happened to be a lot more to this. A community formed around the channel and many tried contacting Obedece through DMs and comments on his videos, but he very rarely replied, until he decided to create an MSN account to chat with people who had proven that they were worthy of that honour. In addition to YouTube, he was active on MySpace where he posted his drawings, and eventually decided to create a forum to interact with people who were interested in his content. The more he shared his thoughts and ideas and interacted with people, the clearer it became that he was an extremely disturbed individual who took unusual enjoyment out of gore and extreme fetish content. Even more baffling though, he acted as if Morsa was a legit religion of some kind. He even believed he himself was a god, which explains why he seemingly thought he was above speaking to most people. He reportedly said that the base of operations of Morsa were in Peru, Argentina, Chile and Mexico, but many other details about it changed from one day to the next, leading many to believe he was making it up off the top of his head to maintain his following. Users would comment on his videos and channels saying he was a messenger whose purpose was to communicate a message of salvation that was hidden in his videos. It seems that Obedece had his followers go through an initiation ritual in order to prove they were worthy enough to speak to him, which is thought to be a number of tasks they had to complete, though what these tasks consisted of is mostly unknown. It doesn't sound like anyone that was somehow deemed worthy enough had any meaningful conversations with him, discussion mainly centred around the questionable topics he was interested in. The forum was quickly divided into the believers, people that worshipped Obedece, and the mass, who were the non-believers. This segregation was bound to fuel an us versus them mentality. Pair that with Obedece, the central character, who has portrayed himself as of an elevated status, and the perfect foundations for the beginning of a cult were being laid. Over the next few months, more and more people discovered Obedece's channel and the forum, and so he gained more supporters, and just as many people that opposed him. Of the dozens of people who claimed to worship Obedece, it's not clear how many of them actually bought into the ideology, and how many were just seriously invested in the role-playing, but it seems that at least some were totally taken in by him. Those who saw straight through his lies took it upon themselves to denounce him though. One of his main critics was "Music is my faith," we'll call him Faith. He uploaded a 3-part series titled No Obedece, which translates to "I will not obey," inspiring others to do the same. The original videos were deleted, but part 1 and 2 have been re-uploaded by The Return of Uth on YouTube. I couldn't find part 3 though, so that might well have been permanently lost. Faith mainly focused on analysing the videos uploaded by Obedece, but did a bit of digging into his personal life too. According to an article from February 2020, Faith was sure that Obedece was a student at the University of Guadalajara in Mexico. I'm not sure what else he discovered though. He tried to comprehend the symbolism in the videos, like the white bunny that appeared in most of them and the use of children's media. He said in the first video, "I have taken the trouble to do this follow-up in order to uncover the truth about certain videos on YouTube. The creator of such videos calls himself Obedece the Walrus. This guy, although we all believe that he is sick in the head, hides certain dilemmas in his videos that have left unknowns in us. This guy is cunning and apparently I think there's something like a hidden message in his works." Between each upload, others had offered their suggestions, allowing him to refine his theories, though unfortunately it's not clear what conclusion he reached as part 3 is nowhere to be found, and discussions of this story are few and far between. Dreamer1, who posted the write-up on Reddit, said, "The conclusion of Music is My Faith's investigation is unknown to us, but it can be surmised that it caused quite a stir. Soon a war would ensue, and flame wars, response videos defending one side or the other, and general pettiness would come. Sooner than later, the existence of 2 groups was determined, those who obeyed and those who rebelled." As Obey the Walrus gained traction and more people expressed interest in the community that had formed around its creator, many were rejected, but an inner circle of Obey's most trusted associates formed, the most notable of whom was Conquasabit, we'll call him Con. He almost seemed infatuated with Obey and the idea of La Morsa, and fully bought into Obey's wild claims, including that he was a god. Con believed that he could help spread the message, and so he contacted Obey in December 2007 to express his admiration and offer help. He wasn't the only worshipper to do so, but something about him piqued Obey's interest, and he decided to give him a chance to prove himself. Con was told to produce tribute videos, and so he uploaded 3 of them, which, like Obey's video, featured clips of Sandie Crisp tap dancing, with similar effects and music and the occasional creepy image. Obey was clearly impressed, and when talking to Con privately, started referring to him as his Prince of Terror, though when others asked him about that publicly, he denied it, perhaps because he wasn't 100% sure of Con's loyalty yet. Over time, the two grew closer though, and Obey gradually revealed more and more personal details, having only given Con false information previously. I suspect that was because he didn't fully trust Con with true details at that point, but it also could have been a test to see what he'd do with that information. Whatever tests Obey threw at him though, he passed, and he was eventually publicly recognised as Obey's right-hand man. Con seemed to be too wrapped up in awe of Obey to care much about talk outside of the community, but this public recognition had caused him to become the target of the non-believers who were dedicated to exposing Obey. 77 Tortellini was one of these people. He had made his own No Obedece, or I Will Not Obey series, in which he identified subliminal messages and symbolism, but failed to find any deeper meaning in the Obey the Walrus video. As a side note, it doesn't sound like anyone was able to find anything concrete within that video, even though there was plenty to dig through in the others. Many were convinced that there had to be a message hidden somewhere, they just hadn't found it yet. Tortellini decided to upload a series on Con, in which he analysed his videos as he had with Obey's, and came out with some pretty crazy and probably way too deep theories. Though he did make an interesting comparison between Obey and Con, and Kira and Mikami, 2 characters from the anime series Death Note. According to Dreamer1's Reddit post, Kira wrongly believes he is a god, while Mikami blindly believes this and aims him in his quest for cleansing the world of all evil. Conquasabit used the Kira/Mikami theme song's semblance of dualism in his videos, and the title of the track is an apt description of Obey's and Conquasabit's relationship, the dualism between a god and a mortal, a king and his servant, a manipulator and his victim. The fact that 77 Tortellini used a picture of Nia, a detective in Death Note who worked to bring Kira down, as his YouTube avatar only makes this metaphor far more compelling. Tortellini despised Obey and everything he stood for, and according to Dreamer1 was one of the most savage players of this whole story, probably the second most disgusting after Obey himself. He had every reason to oppose Obey, and by extension Con too, but it sounds like he took it way too far, for example by joking about abuse. Here's a quote from his final video that was apparently pretty tame compared to other things he said. "You disgust me, Obey the Walrus. You're a loser and don't deserve any kind of forgiveness. You've caused so much damage. Do you know how many children had nightmares because of you? Do you know how many people have felt confused because of your delusions? People like you shouldn't even exist in this world, and if more people like you happen to be born, we're all going to get our brains filled with shit, but not like your brain, which is already shit-filled in abundance. A dog's waste is more significant than you, yet you believe you're a god and you're above us. In reality, you're less than any single thing that exists in the wide and foreign universe." Despite the mounting criticism, Obey's reign continued for many months, and Con stood by him the whole time, only seeming more dedicated as time passed, which made what was about to happen even more shocking. A video uploaded by Kaf Samek Samek, we'll call him Kaf, another YouTuber who had done his own No Obedece series, managed to obliterate the relationship between Obey and Con within 8 minutes. Kaf was in contact with Music Is My Faith, the first critic of Obey's we discussed, who started the No Obedece series trend. As it happened, Faith was also in contact with Con, and he sent Kaf screenshots of an MSN conversation between him and Con, in which Con had shared Obey's personal information with him for his final No Obedece video. It seemed that Con had woken up, He was no longer under Obedece's spell, and he was surely revealing Obedece's information for a reason. But what caused him to suddenly turn on Obedece when he'd been so unquestionably loyal for so long? Whatever happened, Obedece doesn't seem like the type that would give second chances after such a huge betrayal, and their alliance permanently dissolved. The screenshots that Faith had sent Kath also revealed Con's YouTube password. Presumably Faith didn't realise this, but it's not clear, and as a result his account was accessed by various people, one of whom uploaded a video that had nothing to do with the law. As soon as he could, Con changed his password, deleted the video, and begged Kath to remove the video that had disclosed Con's betrayal in the MSN conversation. It still wasn't clear what Con's motives were, but all would be revealed in a series he uploaded, starting with the supposed truth of Obedece Walrus. It turned out that Con never had been a true worshipper or ally of Obedece. The relationship, on Con's side, had been totally faked. It was all an elaborate plot to gain intel on Obedece, with hopes of exposing his motives and true identity to the world. Con did obtain enough information to provide some insight on the community, however his infiltration wasn't complete when Kath exposed his betrayal. Given more time, he could have gathered even more evidence. It had taken Con long enough to gain Obedece's trust in the first place, and he was drip-fed information over a period of many months. It was around 3 months after Con first contacted Obedece that he was asked to prove his loyalty. As we already know, the first task was to create videos similar to Obedece's with hidden messages. After this, he received a message from Obedece saying he had passed the first test and deserved a large part of his throne, but he had to do something else to show that he could really be trusted. He was urged not to make the message public, which totally makes sense considering what Obedece was about to ask him to do. He told him to get the largest white rabbit he could find and take a photo of himself holding it, naked, with the words, "I do this for the walrus," written on his chest. He emphasised the importance of Con's face not being shown in the photo and ended the message with, "If you aren't willing to do this, I will understand, but you have to tell me because this is part of a bigger, elaborate plan." Con's first video resulted in backlash from the Morsa community. Some created videos and write-ups about him trying to expose him as a liar, including Alexa, a worshipper who was an admin of the forums, and Tibisoknok, who impersonated Con and even set up a fake website, obedecealamorsa.com, to profit from ad revenue. Con addressed the allegations against him in his second video, The Walrus's Army vs Conquasabit, Part 1. Among the various theories surrounding Con, it was rumoured that he and 77 Tortellini were the same person. He was accused of using the Tortellini account to vent about people who had attacked him as Con for being an Obedece worshipper, a claim he adamantly denied. YouTube's auto-translate feature isn't perfect, so it's a bit hard to make out every point he made, but it sounds like he was also accused of plagiarism due to the video that was posted after his password had been leaked. He explained that he didn't post that video and deleted it as soon as he realised. It's worth noting that the genre of Obedece the Walrus and other similar videos was known as finiherista in the Hispanic community, and allegations of plagiarism appear to have been very common due to users like Obedece not actually creating any content, but simply editing clips they found in other videos. In part 2 of The Walrus's Army vs Conquasabit, Con expressed disappointment at Alexa's willful blindness, then turned his attention to Obedece's main critics, who, unbeknownst to them, he had actually been fighting on the same side as the whole time. But in this instance, the saying, "the enemy of your enemy is your friend," didn't exactly ring true. Con criticised Tortellini for the extreme remarks in his videos, and highlighted what he had got wrong when analysing the subliminal messages in his videos. Next up was Kath, who Con criticised for leaking the MSN conversation before Con's undercover investigation had reached its full potential, and of course for sharing his password. Finally, he spoke about Music Is My Faith, who decided against using any of the information that Con had provided him on MSN in his final video, clearly wary of someone who appeared to be a loyal worshipper for so long. Shockingly, Con seemed to be implying that Faith might actually have been a worshipper himself all along, or at least that he, quote, seeks the convenience of both sides, or prefers to be friends with everyone. He acknowledged that Faith had started the No Obedece series, but notes that he was active in Obedece's forum and interacted with some of Obedece's worshippers. There was even a comment posted by Faith on YouTube in which he appears to be replying to Obedece in a friendly manner, saying, "Ah, I love you so much, Obedece." Towards the end of the video, Con reassured viewers that the truth would soon be revealed. Enough had already been revealed to cause Obedece to panic though. In fact, he reportedly had a breakdown and ended up deleting many of the threads in the forum. He posted an explanation which doesn't really explain anything of sense, but it does give some insight into his delusional mind. As you will see, the forum is no longer the same as before. Several threads, many of them, have disappeared due to the demonic forces. It is difficult to explain this to you mortals, as your understanding of the nature of the universe is a bit limited, so I will explain it in an easy and simple way so y'all can understand. The demonic forces were born before time, when the universe was there, but not the understanding of its existence. But in spite of this situation, a mystical force struck the grounds, and from that day on, everything that this force touched is known as life. However, the demonic forces would not allow this, and so they decided to fight to regain what was once theirs. This war has lasted millions of millennia, and until recently these two forces were still at war. But then, something we call the Walrus came along. The Walrus is the organisation of the 365 lights and shadows, and is in charge of keeping peace between the two forces. Until 4 millennia ago, everything was going well, until the demonic forces devised a plan to dominate both the mystical force and the Walrus to finally win this eternal war. The mystical force decided to give all its spiritual juice to the Walrus to aid it in this battle, and because of this, there currently are only two beings, the Walrus and the demonic forces. The demonic forces have sworn to end our world as we know it, but luckily we have the Walrus, who will always protect us from the spirits and demons that roam around us. P.S. Forum topics have disappeared due to demonic forces, as apparently a new age of evil is beginning. What has been done to the forum is just the start, so for now please keep starting more threads to confront these demons and tell them we are not afraid. Outside of the Walrus you will be unprotected, but don't worry because the Walrus has a splendid idea that I will share with you later. At this point, it should be pretty clear to you that Obedece was not exactly in the best mental state. His claims about Morsa weren't just things he said to add some lore to his edgy videos, he genuinely believed them. It previously appeared that he thought of himself as a god, though Con had known for some time that he believed the real god was actually Morsa, the Walrus. This realisation led Con closer to figuring out Obedece's intentions and the true meaning of Obedece the Walrus, which was yet to be deciphered. But Con wasn't just interested in obtaining information about Obedece for the sake of an expose series, he was trying to psychologically analyse him. As a psychology student, finding the Morsa community, particularly Obedece himself, was like finding a gold mine. Con had reached some pretty complex conclusions alone, but claimed to have contacted various mental health professionals, including psychologists and psychiatrists, to confirm his theories. Con believed that Obedece's delusions were a sign that he was suffering with schizophrenia. He also analysed Obedece's videos and the drawings he had posted on his MySpace account. A quote from the Reddit post summarises his findings. The drawings seemingly represented different traits of Obedece's personality and mental state: aggression, voyeuristic behaviour, perversion, distortion and confusion regarding sexual identity, maternal dependency, schizoid personality, regressive and childish behaviour, obsessive-compulsive behaviour, belief of delusions and disgust of obesity and race. Conquasabit stated that he showed a few of Obedece's videos to the professionals, who affirmed that they shared the same themes as the drawings. The videos were practically animated editions of the drawings, and then it can be concluded that they weren't meant to be artistic, aesthetically pleasant, nor creative. According to the specialists, they were just a venting method for Obedece, a way of showing his thoughts and inner struggles for the world to see. As for Obedece the Walrus, many had tried and failed to find a hidden meaning like they had in Obedece's other videos. They were so sure that there had to be one, but the video was so simple comparatively. It seems that they couldn't see the wood for the trees, as the real message was likely staring them in the face the whole time. Con's theory, which was allegedly supported by the mental health professionals he consulted, was that the message wasn't in the video. In fact, the content of the video never really mattered, as long as it was something that would catch people's attention and get them sharing the video. The message was seen every time the video was played. It was heard every time someone recommended or analysed it. It was the title of the video: Obedece a la Morsa, Obedece the Walrus. Obedece's sole intention was to spread the word of Morsa, whatever that even was, and when people watched the video, they subconsciously obeyed the Walrus. Assuming Con's explanation was correct, this knowledge alone could destroy the illusion. People would still watch the video, but simply watching it was no longer synonymous with obeying the walrus. Not when the mystery had dissipated and all that remained was the ramblings of a mentally ill individual who was no longer able to distinguish reality from fantasy. Con never found out all the information he had planned to when he first decided to infiltrate the Morsa community, but from the few personal details he was drip-fed by Obey, it seemed that this community was the one thing in Obey's life that he had some control over. Con saw only two options: allow Obey to continue his downward spiral and as a result, inevitably allow more people to fall into his trap, or to bluntly put a stop to his bullshit. I mean, he could have tried to let him down gently or send him the number for a psychiatrist, but that wouldn't be nearly as dramatic. So he decided to make one final video in Obey's signature style, as a way of getting through to him that it was all over and his delusions weren't real. El Fin de Obedece Walrus, or The End of Obedece Walrus, featured footage from the original videos, including clips of Sandie Crisp, and it was full of symbolic imagery, most notably the gravestone that had Obedece Walrus engraved on it, to signify the metaphorical death of Obey. 2 days after this video was uploaded, Obey deleted his YouTube channel and totally vanished from the internet. Many saw this as a positive thing, though he still had some loyal followers who even made a video to honour his memory. The Obey the Walrus video is certainly not unheard of today, and it fueled a trend of Finahario videos that continued after the story of its creator faded into obscurity. What happened to Obey is a subject of much debate. Some speculated he may have taken his own life, others believed he just left the internet, or at least left the Obey persona, maybe even got psychological help, or created a whole new identity for himself to live in a new fantasy world. Many users have popped up over the years claiming to be Obey, some stating that the original channel had been hacked, though these claims are impossible to verify and are improbable. There seemed to be a wave of renewed interest in the Morsa saga in 2017 that I can only assume occurred due to the release of a song titled Obey the Walrus, that likely resulted in people accidentally coming across Obey's creation. Apart from members of Obey's inner circle, many accepted Con's conclusion, but some questioned its validity. From the Reddit post. While the drama itself seemed to wrap up in a perfect final season of the show kind of way, there was still some questions left unanswered. The first example of this being the validity of Conquasabete's final investigation. The weight of his hypotheses were carried by the interpretations of Obey's drawings, the traits displayed in them, and how those correlated with the ideology and the videos. But some users have affirmed that Obey didn't know how to draw at all, and the images in the MySpace account were actually drawn by another person. If there was any shred of truth in these allegations, Conquasabete's investigation would have made no sense. He might have psychoanalyzed an entire different person, which would render all of his efforts useless. It's hard not to question the validity of Con's theories because he didn't exactly use empirical methods to analyse Obey's content. There's a lot of room for interpretation, and he maybe should have focused more on information he could learn about Obey himself rather than his artwork. He claimed to have consulted with specialists about his theories, but I'm not sure I totally buy that. Even being a psychology student, he was lucky to find 8 different professionals that would agree to analyse such content. If he really was a psychology student, surely you'd see the ethical issues with enabling someone's delusions for many months, then doxing them in a video. However, I don't think the specific details of his diagnosis matter too much. Con didn't necessarily have to be spot on with every single personality trait he claimed was expressed in Obey's content in order to break the delusion. He simply had to prove that it was a delusion. It wasn't clear whether Con's plan worked, and Obey disappeared because he realised Morsa didn't exist and he needed psychological help, or if he still believed in Morsa but accepted defeat in his online quest. Obey's real identity is a mystery that has sparked much speculation and still hasn't been definitively solved to this day. By the time Con's final part of the investigation was ready to be uploaded, internet sleuths had already doxed the individual they believed was Obey, and so he concluded the video with that information, including his age, 19, and that he lived in Guadalajara, as Music Is My Faith had previously suggested, alongside a couple of photos of him. The Obey the Walrus wiki and the Obey the Walrus pages on the wikis for the 4chan X board and creepypasta personalities all list this individual, whose name is Jaya, as Obey too, though there's next to no information on how that verdict was reached. The creepypasta personalities wiki states, a 35-year-old Spanish male, identified by his real name, Jaya, claims that he has made the video. His identity was first found by his username on Photobucket, followed by his real name that has been displayed. It's worth noting that the other two wikis list Jaya's age as 27 and 30. It's possible they were updated at different times, but if the information given by Con in his video was correct, Obedece would be around 32 now. Assuming Jaya was found on Photobucket because he had the username Obedece Walrus or something similar, and there's no other supporting evidence, I'm not 100% convinced he really is Obedece just because he claimed to be. Obedece was clearly a private person, demonstrated by the fact his followers, including Con, knew barely anything about his personal life, and the fact that he deleted his account shortly after Con's expose. I find it hard to believe that Obedece would be stupid enough to publicly link his real name with the Obedece pseudonym in the first place, and that he'd openly admit he was Obedece when asked, but it's not impossible. He may have had a reason for finally unmasking himself. There was a comment on the Reddit post that suggested Obedece is actually Jessica Walrus, a musician who apparently confirmed that via DMs on SoundCloud, but according to the Obedece Walrus wiki, Jessica uploaded videos that were inspired by Obedece but is not Obedece himself. Strangely, the cartoon character that Jessica often uses in her album art appears to be the same character that is animated in a video that Dreamer1 linked in their Reddit post. The video, titled The Music of the Creator of Obedece the Walrus, was uploaded in February 2017 and claimed that Obedece the Walrus was back. In the description, the uploader left a link to what was supposedly Obedece's music. The link no longer works, but it was Jaya's last name, who is of course rumoured to be Obedece. The URL of the channel, youtube.com/JessicaWalrus666, plus other videos with mentions of Jessica, appears to confirm that the uploader of that video is in fact Jessica. At this point, I'm not sure if either of them are Obedece, but I do think Jaya and Jessica might actually be the same person. Hear me out. Jessica appears to have many aliases on the internet, most are linked with the music she creates under various different names. She interacts with and follows herself using different accounts on a variety of platforms. She is her own top fan on Last.fm and other sites, and seems to spend a considerable amount of time just listening to her own music and commenting on her own posts. I want to stress just how many profiles there are. I stopped looking after finding nearly 20 on YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, SoundCloud, Bandcamp and various other sites that all appear to link back to Jessica. So my first thought was that Jaya has to be another of Jessica's aliases, and I managed to find some information to support that. In Con's video, he shows a screenshot of a profile by the name of Boltesion Sensoul that he says belongs to Jaya. I searched that username and found a now deleted SoundCloud account that matches one of Jessica's pseudonyms. According to a comment on the Reddit post, when Jessica was asked if her real name was J*R, she said yes, which is presumably Jaya. So if that was the case, Jaya was the only identity, of the ones I'm aware of, in which Jessica presented herself as a male. In the bios on many of her other profiles under different names, pronouns were listed as she/her. The other strange thing was that there were photos associated with Jaya, and while I found a couple of photos of Jessica, the vast majority of her profiles used the cartoon avatar or other artwork. Noticing the strong resemblance between the photos of Jaya and Jessica, I wondered if Jessica had used a family member's photos for the Jaya profiles. Then I came across a piece of information in the bio of one of Jessica's many profiles that made it all click. Jessica is a trans woman. Could it be that when Conquasabit revealed the identity of who he believed to be Obedece, Jessica had not yet come out as trans, and the photos that were shared were of her before she transitioned? As a side note, had it been known at the time that she was trans, I doubt it would have made a difference in terms of how the information was revealed, as throughout the entire investigation there's a lot of dead naming and blatant disregard for Sandie Crisp's preferred pronouns, so be prepared for that if you decide to research any of this for yourself. Anyway, this would explain some of the confusion with the names Jaya and Jessica both being linked with Obedece, and if this is the case, the Obedece Walrus is obviously wrong in implying that they are two different people. But was Obedece another of Jessica's many aliases? It seems very likely. She herself apparently claimed to be Obedece, others have too, but there's more linking her to Obedece than anyone else. There was the Photobucket username as noted in the Obedece Walrus wiki, and I assume there were other pieces of evidence that led people to that conclusion, and for Conquasabit to reveal it in his video. Some believe that Jessica was just a follower of Obedece, which would explain the last name Walrus, but if she isn't Obedece, how likely is it that over 14 years later she would still be using that name? On multiple accounts, she still follows a few Obedece Walrus inspired profiles too, even on accounts that were created in the last couple of years. The fact that she has so many different identities on the internet in itself makes it possible that Obedece was another. Furthermore, in Jessica's YouTube video, The Music of the Creator of Obedece the Walrus, the thumbnail shows a screenshot of a song from what she claims is Obedece's SoundCloud. The album image is what I believe to be one of the photos that were shared of Jessica before she transitioned. Bear in mind she was not publicly claiming to be Obedece on this channel, so she would have been knowingly attaching a photo of herself and passing it off as Obedece. If she wasn't Obedece, it looks like she was at least kind of pretending to be to promote her music. If Jessica was Obedece, it shines a slightly different light on 77 Tortellini's conclusions that I mentioned earlier, but didn't elaborate on because they were seen as too deep and out there. Here's one of Dreamer1's comments summarising his theory. His theory was that Sandie Crisp was some kind of avatar or self-insert for Obedece. Tortellini said they both share three qualities: being a god, being a predator, and being a prey. Being a god, this one is easy. Sandie Crisp's stage name was the Goddess Bunny, and Obedece believed he was a god. Disproven by Conquasabe, but let's ignore that for the sake of 77 Tortellini's theory. Being a predator. Sandie Crisp was a predator because her deformed body shape scared lots of people who didn't know any better. Obedece also believed he was a predator because he used his weird videos to scare his victims. This is also supported by his use of a walrus as a symbol, which according to Tortellini is an animal considered a predator. I think he's wrong and the walrus ain't a predator, but I really don't know. Being a prey. Sandie Crisp was a prey because of all the abuse and humiliation she suffered through all her life. Obedece was also a prey because of the stuff that happened to him in his childhood. Seems like all of these people theorised about some sort of ugly stuff happening in Obedece's childhood. Couldn't find a concrete source, so I didn't mention it in the write-up. Continuing with the animal symbolisms, Obedece also frequently used images of white bunnies in his videos, which are prey animals. So yeah, all of this is kind of a reach and was disproven by Conquasabe, but kinda interesting nonetheless. Kinda amazing how these kids invested so much time in making these theories. I agree that the god, predator and prey thing might be a bit too deep, and perhaps a reach. However, I wonder if Tortellini was on the right track when he implied that Sandie Crisp was some kind of representation of Obedece. Bear in mind, Sandie was more or less the sole focus of the Obedece the Walrus video, and Obedece used a photo of Sandie as their profile pic on YouTube. If Jessica was Obedece, her and Sandie shared one thing in common: they were both trans women. Sandie had fought tooth and nail to live as her true self, and hypothetically, Obedece or Jessica hadn't reached that point yet. Exactly how Obedece intended to portray Sandie is certainly open to interpretation. General consensus at the time was that the video was creepy or disturbing, and perhaps that was Obedece's intention. If they were struggling with gender identity themselves, maybe they created the video as a result of repression, seeing aspects of themselves within Sandie that they weren't comfortable with, and therefore dehumanising her in the video. Or maybe Obedece didn't mean for people to be disturbed per se, but rather enthralled, hypnotised into obeying La Morsa, which to Obedece may have even been Sandie, if they idolised her self-confidence. I don't know, you could really let your mind run wild with theories at this point. I could be way off. Interestingly though, Conquasabe believed Obedece's work showed signs of confusion relating to gender identity, for what that's worth. On the note of Con, there's still one theory we're yet to cover, that they and Obedece are the same person. There were rumours that Con was Obedece way before anyone even suspected who Con was, but since the theory that Obedece is Jessica seems very plausible, and we've seen how intricately she communicates with herself online, it makes this theory even more likely in my opinion. 77 Tortellini may have been the first to suggest it in his final No Obedece video, and Con never even addressed that allegation in their explanation videos, even though it would have been pretty easy to debunk, and despite the fact they addressed allegations from others suggesting that they were actually Tortellini. A couple of weeks after Obedece's channel was deleted, Con also deleted their channel and disappeared from the internet without explanation. Another suspicious detail is that Dreamer1 said in their Reddit post that they googled the names of the mental health professionals that Con claimed to have consulted, but they weren't able to find any trace of them. They note that it was in 2008, and it's possible that they just didn't have an online presence, but as I said before, I personally think there's something a bit fishy about the alleged involvement of the specialists. The Obedece Walrus wiki doesn't subscribe to this theory though, and lists a name and location alongside a photo of who they believe to be Con that do not match Jessica's details. However, there is no information whatsoever explaining how Con was apparently identified, and there are one or two details that the wiki has either gotten wrong or overlooked, so it alone is not a reliable enough source to disprove this theory. The theories surrounding Who's Who are so wild that pretty much everyone has been accused of being everyone at this point, and honestly I can't say I'd be that surprised if all the key players actually turned out to be Jessica. Obey, Con, Kath, Faith. Remember the accusation of Faith actually being a double agent, even though it kinda didn't really make sense that they'd be stupid enough to leave evidence of that. That could have just been Jessica's sloppiness before she figured out each user's roles. You might be wondering how this would even be possible for one person to upload so many videos pretending to be different people. But we've seen her maintain various different personas, and the videos were all loquendo, which is basically text-to-speech, so the voices couldn't be identified or compared. I also noticed that most of the expose videos I've seen that were uploaded by the key players are all edited very similarly, though it is possible that this was just a very popular editing style so many years ago. But why would Jessica do this? I can't rule out it all being a plot to promote her music through various different accounts. Almost every character in this story seems to have a SoundCloud account linked somewhere. However, I wasn't able to trace any of Jessica's music back as early as 2007 under any of the pseudonyms I'm aware she used. It's entirely possible that Jessica did truly believe in Morsa, and she created the community plus the drama that came with it, with hopes of spreading the word and enticing people to talk about it. With all the subliminal messages in the videos and subsequent analysis of these videos, perhaps this was an early attempt at an ARG, either to promote Morsa if she really believed in it, or she made up the Morsa law for the sake of an ARG, or even a social experiment. Perhaps the purpose of it all was more personal. Maybe Jessica was role-playing as these different characters as a form of escapism, using it as a coping mechanism because for once, she had almost total control over the narrative. I'll leave it up to you to decide which you think is most likely and whether or not you think Jessica really did orchestrate the whole thing. Enough information has been preserved for the story to be told without too many holes, but so many relevant videos, posts, comments and other media was lost many years ago. I don't doubt that we'd be left with a few less questions if we had access to that. I'd just like to reiterate, please do not attempt to contact anyone mentioned in this video, including Jessica. Whether or not she was Obedece or any of the other characters in this story, most of the events discussed in this video happened well over a decade ago, and it's clear from some of her profiles that she has struggled with her mental health pretty bad for quite some time. I obviously don't know Jessica, but I'd be willing to bet she's grown up and developed as a person since 2007, so let's not hold behaviour from nearly 15 years ago against her now. That is if she even is Obedece, as there's nothing concrete to prove that, it's just a theory. Dreamer1 ended their Reddit post with a section titled, "The Only Deity Worth Praising," and I'd like to end this video the same way. Sadly, Sandie Crisp contracted COVID and passed away on the 27th of January 2021 at the age of 61. She risked everything to stay true to herself and despite her struggles accomplished so much, even running for President of the United States in 2020. She gained a cult following including Marilyn Manson and Gene Simmons. After her death, headlines referred to her as a trans-disabled cult icon. It's a shame that some only recognised Sandie from the Obey the Walrus video, but then it happened to give many people a chance to learn about her that may not otherwise have even heard of her. To quote the Reddit post, "If we take her stage name at face value, we can affirm that she is the only deity worth praising in this entire story. Unlike Obedece, who forced everyone to worship the Walrus and himself through sheer terror and manipulation, the goddess bunny earned her praise through resilience, strength, and a sense of acceptance of who she really was, warts and all. In the documentary, you can see her kind personality and how she deeply cares about the people around her, especially about the people who have gone or are in danger of going through the same disgraces that happened to her. She was a truly admirable person, and if Obedece did anything good, it was raising awareness to this tragic yet beautiful life story, greatly inspiring those who made the effort to learn more about it. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. Had you heard of the cult of Morsa, and which theory do you think is most likely? If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Huge thank you to my patrons, whose names are on screen now. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Thursday in a new video.